On December 29th, at the age of 76 years old, renowned journalist from CNN. So I'm sorry, I had to say that part. Do we fault people who used to give news by just reading it off a teleprompter? Do we fault that? Because I feel like there's not as much evil in a Ron Burgundy as there is in, I don't know, Rachel Maddow.
Willing purveyors of propaganda, even if they're just reading the line, are blameworthy, maybe not as much as the people who drafted the line, but they're participants nonetheless.
Well, this is him, Aaron Brown. He is a longtime journalist, died at the age of 76, born November 10th of 1948 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, began his career in radio, made the transition to television, worked in Seattle for 15 years, joined ABC News in the early 1990s. Then he moved to CNN in July of 2001. And guess what day was the very first day that Aaron Brown ever broadcast for CNN?
9/11.
Yeah,
Rob's
it's not
favorite.
my favorite day. It's
9/11?
okay, it is my favorite day. Not like a way that I celebrate, but it's my most fascinating day. Yes, September 11th, 2001. Aaron Brown was reporting for nearly 17 hours for CNN, his first on-camera work for CNN. It's odd that if you start with a company in July and you're known for being a reporter, why do you not start for 2 months and 11 days? Why September 11th is your first day as a journalist? Think about it. If you got hired at Valuetainment, that's like us hiring you today, and then we don't put you on camera.
Well, no, but he might have been under contract. It was the summer. Maybe he was on vacation. Maybe he says, look, I want to enjoy the summer,
and
so
the
I'll
contract
start.
just ended on November 10th of 2001?
Well, Rob, I'm curious as to what you think went down here.
Well, this is why I bring it up, because you may not know Aaron Brown, but you may know his footage. This is Aaron Brown reporting on September 11th. This is approximately 20 minutes before the World Trade Center 7 building fell, in which Aaron Brown talks about World Trade Center 7 falling down or on the verge of falling down before it actually collapses. Can we play this clip,
I remember
please?
this.
Now I see where Rob is going.
Information now that one of the other buildings, Building 7 in the World Trade Center complex, is on fire and has either collapsed or
still
is
on
collapsing.
fire.
And I
Is collapsing
you,
or
to be honest,
has
can see
collapsed,
these pictures
but
a
it's
little
right
bit more
there.
clearly than I. But building number 7, one of the buildings in this very large complex of buildings that is the Trade Center, there were, and that is the right way to put it, there were the 2 towers, but then there are a number of support buildings around it, retail spaces, restaurants, office space, garages. The trains come in from New Jersey, bringing commuters, taking commuters back, come into the complex.
Now, that clip is very similar to another clip that has gone viral. This is the BBC. This is also 20 minutes before World Trade Center 7 falls. This is from the BBC, Jane Stanley, who is reporting that World Trade Center 7 has already fallen. This is if you don't know, World Trade Center 7 fell around 5:20 p.m. So this is around 5 p.m., the newscast, where she goes on the news and says before it fell that the building has fallen, even though you can see it in the background.
Okay.
On the latest building collapse in New York, you might have heard a few moments ago, was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. It seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened. During this morning's attack.
That's
we'll
what
probably
that
find
is.
out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
That's Building 7
only really
behind
what
her.
you already know.
That's
Details
building
are very, very sketchy. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke
That's
and
Salomon
ash. And
Brothers
behind
building.
that, there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline. A
There's no
symbol
explanation
of the
for that.
Financial prosperity
Unless your
of
report
this
time
city,
is off.
but,
Well, let me just go see what was in the Salomon
disappeared now,
Brothers
and
building.
New York is still unable to take
tell
on
you
board
that.
what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears.
It
of
hasn't
possible
collapsed
further
yet, sir.
collapses around the area.
Excuse
So
me.
I think your information is
That's
off.
what you would hope, because they don't really know where to turn.
It's
And
still
that's the
not
very sad
falling
thing.
down,
It's
you
still
stupid
not-
bitch.
Very, very traumatized people.
You
They
stupid
just hit them
wanker.
Very, very hard.
Oh, this
Jane, I
place.
think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it.
Good
and
word.
just
So are we.
cannot comprehend
So are
it.
we.
I mean,
I think we're good.
almost
The
sounded-
point has been proven. By the way, you asked a very good question, sir. What is in World Trade Center 7?
What was?
Completed in
Look, I don't want to get conspiratorial.
Sure.
Call it Solomon Brothers building because that gives it a little bit more sinister an undertone than Building 7.
Well, and
but
Robert, you're going to get into Larry Silverstein?
We could. I didn't have it on the docket, but yes.
Well, because not to cut you off, because I mean, I want everybody to understand, guys, they're talking about an event that hasn't happened yet, but they have the report for it happening.
but not just that.
Put that C word and shove it up your you know what, because I hate when people are like, oh, you're one of those guys. That is proof that both of those reporters, 2 separate reports, were given the information to say, and it's still on fire, meaning you know it's going to fall down.
But not just that, by the way. Building 7, if you go look at an aerial, it's not the closest building
It's
to one.
over a football field away. How far was it? A football field?
And not just that. Remember also the explanation as to how the towers fell into their footprint. No steel supported skylights had ever fallen due to a fire before then or after then. They said, it's because of the jet fuel. How the hell does Building 7 collapse hours later, football field away?
Yeah.
So Building 7, completed in 1987, housed offices of several federal government agencies, including the CIA, the Secret Service, and the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission. It became well known after its collapse on September 11th. 47 stories tall. It was the first steel-framed skyscraper in the history of humanity to collapse solely due to fire. And by the way, the size of the building, 47 stories tall. Do you understand that there are only 15 cities in the United States that have a building that is 47 stories tall or higher? There are more than 19,502 different cities and towns in the United States. That means there's 19,487 cities in the United States in which this building would have been the biggest building in the town. Imagine you're living in Oklahoma. Okay, that's a bad example. I'm thinking you live in Montana, Beaumont, Montana, and all of a sudden the 47-story tall skyscraper falls due to fire. Nobody ever asked questions.
It's
crazy.
outlandish of an explanation. The official Steelman, pun intended, narrative is that fire struck the bottom of the building. Somehow it made it over a football field.
yeah.
That the water extinguisher things had malfunctioned that were not there, and that it weakened the base and then caused the collapse. The World Trade Center, they say, jet fuel melted the beams, although the people who say that jet fuel can't melt beams, set that aside. Nothing struck this building. The fire didn't spray and shoot. It's outlandish, but once you understand what was in it, destroyed beyond any form of repair.
What was in it?
Well, he said all these security exchanges, all the
CIA,
people, all
FBI, documentation that if you wanted to destroy it, and I'm
where it
not
would
saying
be.
it was related to, but if you say, hey guys, let's blow this effing building up right now,
Destroy
and
the
kill the
evidence.
evidence, we can use this as a cover. That's one heck of a time to do
Does it get disclosed in the next administration? Do they
Of course
release
not.
the documents?
No.
And by the way, there is-
Kash Patel has said that he has seen the missing 9/11 documents that allege the Saudi involvement in 9/11, and he has said that he's seen all of the documents regarding the JFK and wants to release both. So
If you had a bet, what would you guys say?
Well, I would just...
there is no acceptable theory for how Building 7 collapsed. Period.
Do you think they release the documents in the new administration?
Oh, no,
I don't
no.
think it will
Cash
reveal, I don't
Patel?
think it'll reveal
Absolutely
anything.
not,
No?
because you have to ask... Because let's
then why say you will? I don't understand.
No,
that.
no, I think-
just don't. Then just don't
No, I
lie
think
to
they
us
will.
and go, no,
Yeah.
we can't.
But they
Sorry.
love-
I think they will. They will release it. It will not reveal that which we don't already know in essence. The question is, and I don't think it's in the missing pages, what was in that building that they had destroyed to conceal all of the wrongdoing, meddling of whatever of the CIA and the FBI?
Well, here's what it comes down to. It's, did our government know and let it happen? That's one theory. Because, listen, you cannot tell me, especially as a fucking New Yorker, that what we just saw was all... No, they just messed up in the... No. The whole thing was a sham. Condoleezza Rice allegedly called a mayor of Chicago and said, don't fly to New York that day. Why? I heard a certain group of people were told not to go to work in the World Trade that day. That happened. So it has to be either we knew and we let it happen, or somebody was in there days before setting up explosives and it dropped. There's no way you can make that make sense to me.
Well, this is why this story right here is so important. So this came out on the 31st, perfect time to release this information. No one's paying attention. Everybody's distracted with New Year's. The plea deal for KSM and the other 9/11 terrorists is a final screw you to the Biden administration. The Military Appeals Court has decided not to rescind the plea deals for Guantanamo Bay detainees, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Walid bin Attash, and Mustafa al-Hawasi. Now, you might not know who those guys are by name, but I'll tell you who they are.
Well, especially since KSM kind of sounds like a Korean pop band.
It does now, yes, or a drug you would take to go see a Korean pop band. I'm on that KSM. So Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is widely recognized the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks. Bin Attash is accused of being a key logistical planner, and then al-Hawasi is a financial facilitator of the attacks. But what happened was they were given a plea deal. Lloyd Austin, the plea deal was, hey, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, but we're not going to put you to death. There won't be a trial. Done. Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of...
is he SecDef?
I don't know what he is. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin.
SecDef.
Then tried to rescind the plea deal so that the death penalty was back on the table, and then a judge finally ruled last week that no, the plea deal, you don't have that power to rescind the plea deal. The plea deal is in fact intact, and what that does is that now takes it from having an actual case, an actual trial. Now we don't have one. If the plea deal for the 9/11 hijackers had been revoked, it would likely have meant that we would have trials for the 3 co-defendants. The cases would revert to the pretrial phase, necessitating a full trial to determine guilt and appropriate punishment regarding the September 11th attacks. A trial would require presenting evidence and testimonies regarding the defendant's involvement in the September 11th attacks.
Rob, now I appreciate they're not American citizens and might not be entitled to due process, but can we appreciate it's been 23 years and they haven't had a trial yet? So that in and of itself makes no sense.
Wow.
The plea deal, which they had, struck, was behind closed doors. The only reason they tried to rescind it was because it was made public, and Joe Biden was humiliated by this and said, like, this is a shock to every American. And then he tried to rescind it when it became public and because of the outrage. And now that a judge says, well, conveniently, yes, you can't rescind it. It's binding. And by the way, no trial after 23 years of no trial. So Biden gets to say, like, oh, I tried to rescind this terrible deal, but the judge, the martial court, or whatever, the military court tied my hands. This is institutionalized corruption through and through.
And it's so insulting to the families.
Yep.
Does anybody here know? Luckily, I don't know anybody that was killed in 9/11. I'm not related to anybody, so that's why it's such a weird fascination for me. Like, I get when you lose somebody in a tragedy and you become obsessed with that. I didn't know anybody that died in 9/11, but for some reason my mind's fixated on it. But you're from New York.
I'm from New York. My uncle was downtown, right near my Uncle Charlie was downtown near it. Nobody, thank God, died. But you want to talk about a spit in the face? Those guys are going to stay alive. How much has it costed us to keep those pieces of shit alive this whole time, and then for the rest of their lives? I heard the number was like $3 million of So we're paying for terrorists to live and breathe while 3,000, how much was it, Rob?
2,977 Americans.
Almost 3,000 Americans. And you think about the numbers of families that are ruined, and these scumbags are going to breathe air and get fed and get housed and protection from your tax dollars.
When you factor in deaths from cancer from first responders, I mean,
we'll
you're in the tens. You're in over 10,000.
And so it's not only insulting to the families that they have to continue to live this travesty because they continually, the plea deal's on the table, the plea deal's off the table, the plea deal's back on the table. It's so insulting to these people, but what's even more insulting is what's been done to the first responders from 9/11 by our own federal government. So they may not have been complacent or complicit in 9/11 happening, but they are very much at fault for what is currently going on. This is from the New York Times. This is December 23rd. Money for 9/11 health care has been dropped from the New Year spending bill. Basically, what it did was Congress passed a federal budget that did not include additional funding for the World Trade Center health program, of which there's 120,000 responders and survivors who continue to seek medical care in the aftermath of 9/11. You remember Christy Todd Whitman was standing, she was the governor of New Jersey at the time.
The air is clean.
She was standing on the smoldering rubble, and she's telling people, no, you can come down here and you can help. And it was not clean. It was filled with asbestos, and these people got horrific cancers. And I'd like to show you a clip for all of the shit that we give the left. I think we always talk about who is the Joe Rogan of the left. The only person from the left that I really, really, I have hope for in the future, and I've seen him do great things in the past, is Jon Stewart from The Daily Show. Jon Stewart has been one of the most vocal advocates for 9/11 first responders. And Kelly, if we could show this next video, this is from 2019, where Jon Stewart went on Capitol Hill in front of Congress during the House Judiciary Committee Subcommittee on Constitution, Civil Liberties, and Civil Rights. He was there to advocate for the reauthorization and full funding of the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund. And half of the House Judiciary Committee didn't bother to show up. And Jon Stewart calls him out for just being the complete bag of dicks that they are. Could we please play the tape, Kelly?
Mr. Stewart, I want to thank Mr. Collins and Mr. Naylor for putting this together. But as I sit here today, I can't help but think what an incredible metaphor this room is for the entire process that getting health care and benefits for 9/11 first responders has come to. Behind me, a filled room of 9/11 first responders, and in front of me, a nearly empty Congress.
Wow.
Sick and dying, they brought themselves down here to speak to no one.
Wow.
It's shameful. It's an embarrassment to the country, and it is a stain on this institution.
Wow, shitting on them live.
You should be ashamed of yourselves for those that aren't here, but you won't be. Because accountability doesn't appear to be something that occurs in this chamber. We don't want to be here. Lou doesn't want to be here. None of these people want to be here. But they are, and they're not here for themselves. They're here to continue fighting for what's right. Lou's going to go back for his 69th chemo. The great Ray Pfeiffer would come down here, his body riddled with cancer and pain, where he couldn't walk. And the disrespect shown to him and to the other lobbyists on this bill is utterly unacceptable. You know, I used to get, I would be so angry at the latest injustice that's done to these men and women. And, you know, another business card thrown our way as a way of shooing us away. Like children trick-or-treating, rather than the heroes that they are and will always be.
Wow.
And
that's
I mean,
amazing.
you got to think those guys that ran down to those towers, the people, the firefighters that you see the footage of running up. I mean, you've seen the photos of the firefighters going up the Twin Towers as people are coming down, and they're running up with hoses to try and put out fires to save lives. The ones that did make it out and did suffer health consequences from it, they don't even help them. It's disgraceful. And if something is not done, the funding for 9/11 first responders will end up being bankrupt by 2027.
What was
So
the
we're
budget?
2 years away.
What was the budget that they had for that? If you know offhand,
I don't know offhand. I could probably find
just
it.
to illustrate, to highlight. You imagine the current U.S. government is funding the Ukrainian government, funding Ukrainian small business,
paying all the
100%.
politicians.
and your 9/11
Billions.
heroes are sitting here, literally dying and literally
They
struggling for
asked
health
for a
care.
raise.
The,
They ask for a raise
Yes.
for
Ukrainian
doing
government?
nothing.
The Ukrainian
It's
government.
No, our
disgusting.
government asked for a raise.
Oh,
They,
yeah,
built
but
it, stuck
recently,
it in the
but-
Yes.
bill.
oh, yeah, no,
They kept their raise in the bill and they took their.
That's incredible. And we spend trillions of dollars a year in taxes. I think they can allocate some money to those who saved
Everyone
Americans.
needs
It's
to
like
vote it out.
absolutely ridiculous.
because Zelensky needs new sweaters and cocaine. He has to keep. We have to keep sending them
and
money.
what are we, between 30 and 70% of whatever they're financing doesn't make it to the front. I mean, it's an insult. I mean, it's an
I mean,
absolute insult.
all those political people that weren't there, their seats should have been given up. Like they should have actually had to be held accountable.
John
for
Stewart
that.
is right. There
Is
is
there
no
anything
accountability.
citizens can do? Can we chip in?
I mean, you could do a GoFundMe, but I'm pretty
Not a
sure
GoFundMe, a Give, Send, Go. We never
Give,
use
send, go. I
Go
apologize.
F
I
me.
will never say that again.
Yeah, I don't know
It's
if the numbers
heartbreaking.
are in there for how much funding it costs,
all
but
good.
any amount is enough that we should be covering it because the fact of the matter is these men and women are brave individuals. We didn't know what was going on at September
Yeah.
11th. Hindsight, yeah, we know that what happened. But at that point, you didn't know if the other buildings were collapsing. All the planes were grounded, but that didn't mean that the terror had been done for that day. And not knowing the risks of breathing in what they were breathing, they went down there to try and do what was right and save lives. And our own government cannot find the way to get them reimbursed for their medical care and at least cover this stuff so that these guys, how many chemo, 60 something? 69 different chemotherapies. And you can't help the guy out so he doesn't have to travel down to Capitol Hill and testify.
What's amazing is that there's a history of the government using soldiers and using the military as a testing ground. It's for them to get up there and say the air is clean, it's okay to breathe the air, even if you're not a first responder. They knew it was a lie at the time, if only because they didn't know that they had no basis to say it. They said it. People would have come down regardless to help because heroes are heroes and they respond to it, the call when it comes. They lied. And then people get sick from their lies, and then they make them beg for their own survival later on in life. 24 years later.
You know the cost of each chemotherapy is between $3,000 and $7,000. Multiply that by
70.
It's insane. And you have a former presidential candidate that was running, Kamala Harris, saying that we were going to pay for all the transgender surgeries in jails. That was a focus for them, but crickets when it comes to actually.
Nothing for us. So if you like this clip, click right here. And if you want to see more like it, click right here. Stay angry, Patriots.